So we're working on this Tacoma. I think it's a 10 or 11. And it's got a rattle in it. Sounds like it's coming from the belt tensioner. I changed the idler pulley down here and the idler pulley up there. The customer changed the one above, and I changed the bearing on the tensioner, but it only comes in when the AC compressor cycles on and at a low RPM. The customer originally thought it was the AC compressor, but it's not. My concern is it might be internal. So I'm going to take the drive belt off and run it. So this is actually a 14 Tacoma. I took the belt off the crank pulley, put it off to the side, started up, and it's dead silent. So I think the pivot mechanism on this tensioner is worn and it's chattering. Now looking at this tensioner, I thought it would be a 5-minute job to change, but it goes behind the AC compressor. So you have to remove the AC compressor to get this out. Way to go, Toyota. Wow. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like 5 mounting bolts that hold it on, and these are the 3 bolts for the AC compressor. I've already changed the pulley, the bearing in the pulley, and that didn't make any difference. Well, let's get going. So you can get at the top AC compressor bolt through the wheel well here after you take this flap off. You might need a long extension. Yeah, bolts coming out. Now the 2 bottom bolts, we'll do the back one first. So I got the lower bolt out from the back down here and the forward bolt loosened. But it turns out there's another bolt way up. You can see it in the middle of the screen behind that bracket. You can't get it through the wheel well. At least I can't see it through the wheel well because there's a wiring harness in the way. I wondered why 3 bolts and it still doesn't come out. Oh brother, they're so proud of this tensioner, they built the truck around it. So it turns out you can get at that bolt. Bit of a challenge with a long extension and a universal 12 mil. So there's the AC compressor unbolted from the engine. There is a brace over here that you have to undo from the front of the engine with a little 6 mil bolt as well. But now I see something else. One of the fasteners is behind the ear of the alternator. So that means I got to take the frickin' alternator off too to get that bolt out. The top, very top bolt up there. There's certainly not a lot of room here. There's 2 fasteners down here. You can see one there and one there. One up a little higher. Let's look at the new part. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one here is the boss for the alternator right here. The alternator is sitting right here. So I can't get that bolt out. At least it doesn't look like it. So there's a better view of that bolt. Way to go, Toyota. Well, let's see if we can loosen these 2 alternator bolts through the wheel well here, because you can't get them from the top very easily. So I had to pull the alternator off that bracket because the alternator actually sits on that bracket too as well as part of the alternator support. So there you can see the bolt behind the ear. So I tied the alternator up with a couple of tie straps so I can get at 3 bolts now from down here through the wheel well. Look what's behind the AC compressor behind that bracket. That's the crank sensor there. What a beautiful place for it. So once you get the top 3 bolts, the bottom 2 bolts you can access through here by tying the AC compressor up, and then it should come out of there. I also took the pulley off. It's a left-hand threaded bolt. Give me some more room here. See if this will come out of here. Of course not. Oh well, it's close. So there it is out. Now that ear on the alternator has a sliding sleeve and it's going to be tight to put in there. I'm going to try and reposition that sleeve on the alternator before we get carried away. So here's a little hack if you want to do this, it's up to you. On the alternator, at the back of the alternator is a sliding nut that slides in the alternator housing and compresses on this ear. If you don't push that nut back, you'll have a hell of a time getting this alternator back over this ear. So what I did was I measured this and it was 1.159 inches, and I took a Rolex sanding disc and I sanded 5 thou off of it. So it should, because that sleeve will slide out or in that 5 thou. Don't take it off this side because that aligns it. This side here is where the sliding sleeve is in the alternator. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it up there. Back of that alternator. There's no way to get up there and tap it back. So I'm going to I just did that. I'm going to test fit it on there before I slide or mount the bracket on the engine. So make sure you start all 5 bolts before you tighten any of them up. Do the bottom 2 first, obviously. And then lower the AC compressor so you can gain access to the top 3. And then bolt the alternator on while the AC compressor is laying down. So that's the tensioner reinstalled, the AC compressor, alternator, belt, serpentine belt on. It's quite a routing with that belt. So now we're going to start it up and hopefully the noise is gone. I know that tensioner's got a lot more tension on it than the original one did. Well, no more rattling, no more chattering. Watch for the AC compressor to kick back in again. Because that's when it would start chattering, was when the AC compressor loaded the belt drive system. That's nice and quiet now. Well, put the wheel back on and inner fender skirt back in and we're good to go. Oh, and the stump pan.